Today, most wars occur within a country's borders or between armed groups without dedicated air forces, while air superiority allows the U.S. to engage in global conflicts with relatively more freedom and less risk compared to ground warfare, such as the ongoing airstrikes against Islamic State militants in Iraq. However, during the 20th century, when armies clashed and before the U.S. achieved air dominance, air battles often lasted hours or even days, involving thousands of fighter planes and playing a decisive role in the outcome of wars. One such battle unfolded over the skies of Britain in the summer of 1940, when the German Luftwaffe fought against the British Royal Air Force. Thousands of pilots engaged in dogfights in cramped, sweltering cockpits. This nearly 4-month-long battle became the largest air combat in world history, with no prior aerial conflict matching its duration or intensity. Despite suffering significant losses, the British ultimately turned the tide, winning the battle and halting the Nazi advance on Europe. So what led to the defeat of the world's most powerful air force, the Nazi Luftwaffe, at the hands of the Royal Air Force? Join History EX on a journey through time to uncover the answer today. After the swift and glorious victory in France on June 22, 1940, the German High Command believed the Western Front in Europe had come to a close. Germany demanded that Britain negotiate a peace treaty, but Winston Churchill, newly appointed as Prime Minister, and his government refused and continued their resistance. This left Germany no choice but to prepare a plan to conquer Britain. To do so, Hitler devised a large-scale invasion by land and sea, codenamed Operation Sea Lion. But the Nazi Führer knew that the Luftwaffe must first defeat the Royal Air Force, securing air superiority to weaken British defenses and pave the way for a naval and paratrooper invasion. Confident in the Luftwaffe, considered the world's strongest and best-trained air force at the time, Hitler believed their fearsome reputation would be enough to intimidate Britain into surrendering and negotiating peace. However, things were not so simple. The Austrian painter-turned-dictator underestimated the determination of the British people, military, and their brilliant Prime Minister. According to the plan, German forces would launch their invasion from the western ports of France, crossing into Britain. Paratroopers would be dropped into Brighton and Dover. Once they secured the coastline, German troops would advance northwards to capture Gloucester and encircle the capital, London. The objective of the attack was to surround and shell London, rather than to storm the city directly. German commanders believed that by controlling southern England up to the 52nd parallel and capturing London, British forces in the remaining parts of the country would lay down their arms. This enormous responsibility was assigned to Naval Commander Erich Raeder and Luftwaffe Commander-in-Chief Hermann Göring. According to History EX's research, Germany prepared for the historic air battle with 2,550 aircraft, while the British had 1,963. Although British planes were of high quality, they lacked experienced pilots, as many had perished during the French campaign. At that time, anyone with a pilot's license was considered for the Air Force, yet the number of pilots lost often exceeded those recruited. Royal Air Force. Commander-in-Chief Hugh Dowding eventually decided to recruit foreign pilots to fight. Of the roughly 3,000 pilots flying Hurricanes and Spitfires during this period, about 1/5 were not British. As the defending force, the RAF had certain advantages over the Germans. Britain had advanced radar systems providing early warnings of German aircraft, along with 51 radar stations along the southern coast and the Royal Observer Corps, ROC, which used everything from complex tracking tools to simple binoculars. British aircraft also had the advantage of shorter combat durations over Kent and Sussex, as they could quickly land to refuel, whereas German planes had to endure long flights. Germany's over-reliance on bombers and a shortage of necessary fighter planes further hindered their campaign. As for the German planes, once they exhausted their ammunition, they were virtually useless and unable to protect their bombers over British skies. At the time, British Prime Minister Churchill remarked, "German planes are faster and capable of flying higher, but British planes are more maneuverable and better armed. To slowly execute their plan to subdue Britain, from July 9th onwards, German Dornier Do 17 bombers carried out reconnaissance missions, while constant patrols for German convoys placed British pilots under severe strain, depleting fuel and exhausting crew members. When 9 British Defiant aircraft from Squadron 141 took to the skies on July 19th, 6 were shot down by Bf 109 fighters before a squadron of Hurricanes arrived to assist. The RAF managed to shoot down 16 enemy planes, but they lost 7 of their own. The British Navy subsequently ordered all convoys to travel only at night. By the end of July, the RAF had lost 150 aircraft, while Germany lost 268. In August, Germany shifted tactics, bombing airfields, radar stations, and command centers, hoping to ground British planes. Without radar, the RAF would be unable to respond in time to German assaults. On August 8th, another 18 coal-carrying ships and 4 destroyers were sunk, but the British Navy still decided to mobilize another convoy of 20 ships instead of transporting coal by rail. After repeated Stuka bomber attacks that day, 6 ships were severely damaged, 4 were sunk, and only 4 others made it to their destination. The Royal Air Force, RAF, lost 19 fighters but managed to shoot down 31 German planes. At this point, the British Navy had to cancel all sea transport across the Channel, opting instead to move goods by rail. However, these early battles provided both sides with practical experience. At the same time, it became clear that certain aircraft, such as the Defiant and Bf-110, were not capable of close-quarters combat in this campaign. August 13, 1940 was known as Eagle Day. Under Hitler's orders, the Luftwaffe was to throw its full strength at defeating the British Air Force, paving the way for Operation Sea Lion, the planned invasion of Britain by sea and land. The German Air Force launched 2 waves of attacks, with a total of 1,485 sorties, bombing airfields, radar stations, and aircraft factories in southern England. The RAF fiercely resisted, resulting in the loss of 55 German planes in a single day, while Britain lost only 13. On August 15th, German bombers and fighters launched another massive attack, with 2,000 sorties, including from Norway, targeting airfields and forcing the RAF to retreat beyond the range of German aircraft. However, the Nazis faced heavy losses, with 75 planes shot down, while the British lost only 34, dubbing it the greatest day. August 18th marked the most intense day of fighting, with the greatest losses on both sides. The Germans lost 100 planes, while the British lost 135. The situation changed on the night of August 24th to the early morning of August 25th, 1940, when a squadron of Heinkel He-111 bombers dropped bombs on London. The RAF immediately retaliated the following night, with 81 British bombers attacking Berlin, 29 of which reached the city, dropping 22 tons of bombs. From that point onward, civilians on both sides began to suffer immense anguish. In the end, many cities in Britain and Germany were reduced to rubble and ashes, with hundreds of thousands of people dying in the hail of bombs and fire. On September 14th, 509 German bombers launched an attack on the small city of Coventry, a hub of Britain's aircraft industry, resulting in 554 deaths and 865 serious injuries. Despite this, the British doubled their aircraft production and grew even stronger. By the end of October, the intensity of the attacks began to subside. The British government in London believed the worst of the danger had passed, though the bombing continued until May 1941. September 15th marked the final moment when Hitler's patience for an air war with Britain ran out. Then, on September 17th, the Nazi leader indefinitely postponed the invasion of Britain, although sporadic bombings continued afterward. By the final day of the battle, Britain had lost nearly 80% of its fighter aircraft, approximately 1,744 planes, while Nazi Germany had lost nearly 75% of its total aircraft, roughly 1,977 planes. Combined, the two sides lost over 30,700 aircraft. According to military experts, one additional reason for the Nazis' humiliating defeat was that their air force was heavily disrupted by the thick fog characteristic of British weather. Writing about the German bombings of London during this period, British author Constantine Fitzgibbon noted, "After 4 o'clock in the afternoon, trains no longer ran, but all the stations were packed with people. In hindsight, we don't remember the fires and the collapsed houses, but the indescribable crowds of people, night after night, seeking shelter in the underground stations." Between September 7th and 30th, 1940, German aircraft dropped 5,631 tons of bombs and 7,499 incendiary bombs on London, then the largest city in the world. The defeat in the air battle over the UK was also the first military failure for the German army, leading to the collapse of Hitler's Operation Sea Lion and marking a major turning point in World War II. The British considered this a decisive victory, halting the German advance on the Western Front. Moreover, this victory led to Britain's involvement in the Battle of the Atlantic and the Normandy invasion in 1944. The Royal Air Force had thwarted Germany's attempts to dominate the skies. But was this RAF victory a surprise? If we objectively compare the forces, technical conditions, and strategic starting points during the summer of 1940, a different picture emerges. Although the Luftwaffe had a greater number of aircraft, about double, of the approximately 2,600 planes ready for combat at the beginning of July 1940, only around 800 of them were modern single-engine fighters, specifically the Messerschmitt Bf 109E. In contrast, the RAF had over 700 similar aircraft, including around 250 Spitfires, which outperformed the Bf 109 in air combat. They were faster, more maneuverable, easier to fly, and more robustly built. But more important than the number of planes was the operational time they could spend in the air each day. Since Hurricanes and Spitfires mostly operated from bases in southeast England, they could easily engage in multiple hours of combat and several battles per day. Meanwhile, the Messerschmitts, with a fuel tank of only 400 liters, had to travel a long distance, allowing them only 20 to 30 minutes of combat time over British skies. Thus, one Spitfire could engage in combat at least as much as 3 Messerschmitts per day. Another advantage the RAF had was the use of radar systems for the first time in these air battles, allowing commanders to know the time, location, and altitude of enemy planes, guiding British fighters to intercept and surprise their opponents. At that time, the Germans had no way to neutralize this radar system. Despite these advantages, the Luftwaffe initially held the upper hand due to its larger reserve forces, easily recovering from losses. The biggest problem for the RAF was a shortage of pilots. Marshal Hugh Dowding, commander of the RAF, expressed concern that one British pilot had to fight against 5 German pilots. However, Britain had a clear advantage in aircraft production. According to journalist Clive Ponting, from early July to early October 1940, despite heavy losses, the RAF's number of fighter planes increased from 644 to 732, while the Luftwaffe's numbers dropped from 725 to 275. By mid-September 1940, the Germans also withdrew some air units. Despite the relatively balanced situation with a slight advantage for the British, the outcome of the air battles over Britain could have been different if Hitler and Göring had continued their original strategy and focused on gaining air superiority. The Battle of Britain was the first campaign in history where 2 military forces engaged solely in aerial combat. Before this, no bombing raids or aerial clashes had ever been so prolonged and devastating. Britain's victory is considered a model air defense in the 20th century, showcasing the courage and resilience of both the military and the British people. It also became a stepping stone for Britain to rebuild its military forces and establish itself as a stronghold for the Allies. September 15th is annually commemorated as the historic air battle, a significant milestone in stopping the Nazi forces from conquering all of Europe. That was the complete account of the Battle of Britain, a pivotal moment in World War II. What are your thoughts on this legendary battle? Share your opinions with everyone by leaving a comment below. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to stay updated with the latest videos from History X. For now, on behalf of the program, History X bids you farewell and looks forward to seeing you in future videos.